Call the meeting to order. We respectfully acknowledge that we're meeting on a traditional and respectful lands of the Coast Salish people. I get a motion to adopt the agenda, please. Trustee Schmidt, seconder. Trustee Lise. Minutes from the May 24th Board of Education and Business. Can I get a motion to pass those, please? Welcome to Trustee Thorne. All those in favor? Motion carried. Action list. Superintendent.
I have no items on there.
Oh, Jason.
Yeah, all items on the action list are complete.
Petitions and delegations. Delegations, Coheman Elementary School, Jen Calvary, you're on.
Thanks, Bill. Good afternoon, everyone. Antha Jen Calverley. My name is Jen Calverley. I am here on behalf of Coheman Elementary School. I'm joined by Mark Williams in the back there. He is acting vice principal at this time, and we're thankful to be here this afternoon to share with you a little bit about our school and our framework for enhancing student learning. Coheman resides on the land known as Coleum, and that is the area of Cliffs Road where the sun rises early and ripens the berries early in the season. We also acknowledge Walter George as the original steward of the land and thank him for caring and creating the space where we learn. Coheman has approximately 315 students. We are growing. Approximately 60% of our students are Indigenous, 5% are immigrants, and about 35% are non-Indigenous. 70% of our learners are identified with Ministry of Education and Nations, and we are very diverse in our identities and who we are as individuals, and everyone is welcome and accepted at our school. We have a very large staff, over 45 people, EAs, classroom teachers, support staff, inclusive ed staff, and we also have a large Indigenous education team. So a lot of adults working together on behalf of our learners. And we are the Coheman Yakula. We are known as the Eagles, and our tagline is "Watch us soar." Standing for strong, open-minded, adventurous, and respectful. I think it's also important to know a little bit about Coheman. A lot of we mentioned we have a really large Indigenous education team. We have an after school program. We have a strong start, an early learning facility that will be opening soon. We have a meal program and offer breakfast, lunch, and snacks to over 100 students every day. We also have a grocery program, which is heavily supported by Nourish and Cowichan and the Rotary group, and we provide 75 bags to families every week. And we also have a bit of an outreach program that supports some of our learners that are not consistently attending school at this time. Students, a little bit about our school. Many wonderful things, but the things that we take note about are when we're listening to our students is sometimes they get stuck in their learning. They like to remind us that they need more time with their work. Regular check-ins. They appreciate all the extra support that we can provide them, and they reminded us that we need to be patient. They also shared with us that sometimes kids aren't kind. They need help with social problem solving, help with being nicer to each other, and relation and support and everything. You're gonna need across every conversation, every survey. It always comes clear that students' relationships with staff and their peers are very important, and they want time every day to connect and feel that spend time with their friends and want to have relationships and appreciate the relationships they have with the adults at school. If you were to ask our staff about our students, they would say their strengths are they're imaginative and curious, empathetic and caring, diverse in their identities and accepting of each other, respectful of the local history, culture, and community, and always excited to be outside and exploring nature. Some of our stretches, those things that we're working on, is achievement in literacy and numeracy. I think this is actually something we're really growing and getting better at, but our stamina for learning, self-efficacy, believing that we can and knowing that we are able to achieve any goal we put in front of ourselves, attending school regularly, and emotional regulation. Just to share with you some of our data, we've got lots of data, but some of the things that really stand out to us when we were formulating our goals for our framework. One set of data is our FSA. It shows us that more than 50% of our learners are not yet proficient in literacy skills. Our 2022 student learning survey also shared that our students want more cultural memory and history embedded into their learning. They want to learn more about the local and the community. Conversations with our community and our community partners and families. Focusing on students, some students face adverse childhood experiences and stressful situations outside of school. And we need to be creating an environment that is emotionally supportive, positive, and welcoming for our students, and be able to support our students when they arrive every day and help them to have wonderful days at school. And again, student interviews, relationship needs came out again. And some kids even mentioned that sometimes they don't come to, if they don't have relationships and feel good about those connections, they might not come to school. So it's really important for us to do this work. We have 3 goals, and 3 of our goals sort of align with the strategic plan. Our first goal is around the learning. We are working to support all students in becoming independent and confident readers. So 3 ways that we're doing this, there's actually multiple ways, but 3 big ways. One of the first things we really need to do is come together as a community of adult learners. We need to be working hard on behalf of our students, developing our knowledge and understanding of effective reading instruction, prioritizing it so that we're all on the same page and working together. And this is our EAs, our classroom teachers, our learners, everybody has come together with the focus of developing a stronger understanding of how children learn to read. Because it's not only our primary students that are teaching our students, it's our intermediate teachers and those that are in high school know that it's also something that we're working on in high school. I wanted to be using evidence-based literacy programs and strategies. We needed to bring a bit more cohesion to the work that we are doing and be really responsive to what we know about our students and where they are at. And so we've been really fortunate to have the literacy coordinator, Lisa Kermit, on site, literally learning alongside us and working with us. She is embedded into our school. She works with us in all areas of our learning as professionals. She works with our students, and she really is helping us to hone in our practices and do some really good work around reading instruction. You know what the data is, we know what we need to do. We just need that support and getting better at what we're doing. And then the last thing, which is sort of where we are in our journey. This is a very long journey, but we're right now in our journey. Is activating cycles of assessment and progress monitoring to inform our instruction. It has been, sometimes we collect data, but we don't always know what to do when we get to data. So we need to be thinking about, now that we know what our students can do and where they are with their reading skills, what's next? And also making it more of a consistent cycle. We want to make sure that we are being very targeted, personalized, and helping each child. So it's not like my friend up here, Carlo, from right? And kids are feeling great about how they are learning to read. And one of the great things that came across in our student learning survey from last year, and it's not that our data isn't there yet. We're growing in our data, but it's not where, of course, where we want it to be. But our student learning surveys showed that many more students are feeling more confident with what they're doing. And that is what is as important. We want students to be feeling good about what they're doing. Our second goal is to actively embed Indigenous ways of knowing and the history, culture, and language of the Indigenous peoples of Canada in students' daily learning experiences at school. This is, of course, connected to Indigenous ways of knowing. Overall, I think we're trying to become more culturally responsive in our learning environment. You'll see this in the physical space when you visit Cohaman. You'll see our new mural, you'll see our garden, you'll see signage. So you'll see that reflection in the physical space of our local culture. When you come into our building, we're hoping to increase that representation of Indigenous people in rules, in strong places, and just helping our learners to see themselves in community, in roles and positions. We are also working to embed, well, we already have been doing this, but really being thoughtful about embedding history, language, cultural practices into the day-to-day experiences of kids at school. And one of the great things that we're doing right now is actually as a whole school over the course of the year, every class is going to come together and write their own land acknowledgements. Sometimes our land acknowledgements can be a bit mechanical. You know, we acknowledge the local, just laughing, you know, the Cowichan people and whatnot, but we are going through a process where we are making sure that when we acknowledge the land, we're doing it in authentic ways. And we are making our goal is to have every student walk or finish this year having their own land acknowledgement that they are able to use and contribute to our school in their classrooms and activities and whatnot. So just an example of how we're embedding it into our day-to-day practices at school. And then I think, as always, we are continuing to reflect on our practices, continuing to learn about the history, the local community, and be reflective about who we are as a people and how we're contributing to truth, reconciliation, and healing. Our last goal is around relationships and that culture of care, and this I believe is actually a strength of Cohaman's. We do this work really well. To continue to build strong relationships among students, families, and the local community, and to create a nurturing and positive learning environment for everyone. One way for asking that is this goal of relationships is being really intentional about creating spaces and places and activities for kids to build relationships with staff and adults. And we do this through clubs and sports and school events like barbecues, but we also do things like family groups. We come together, we've reorganized our whole school into multi-age groups. And once a month, that new group of learners, which all have an animal name, an Indigenous animal name, they come together. So the SPEC, the Stockweed, they come together. And we focus on Cowichan teaching, and we do something together with older students, younger students, and different classroom or teachers and staff, so that we're building relationships across the school, not just across the grades. So for example, this month, the Cowichan teaching that we're focusing on is honoring elders. We came together, wrote cards and notes of gratitude to elders to deliver down the road to some of our elders in our community. And then we also need to be mindful of common core practice, making sure that we are creating that safe, positive, welcoming place for all our learners to come to school. When we preach every day, we are doing it with understanding, empathy, and we're really focusing on social emotional learning and making sure that each day is a wonderful day for all our students, and they're feeling well supported, cared for, in order so that they can do their work as a learner and have experience growth and positive learning. Oh, the last slide is gone. Okay. I think it's probably famous. I think just the last slide was just, I think it was about our commitment, and I think we're committed to Just a commitment, but it's a commitment statement, and I apologize, because just specify, just let it go. Any questions?
Questions?
Comment. This applies to every school within Carleton School District. I have to say, that, we talked about it there when I met with some of the elders, and I told one that there was a point in our time when education was trying to fit indigenous kids in so they get accomplished. Now it seems as though the schools have woken up and we're trying to fit education with indigenous ways. And I think that should apply to all ethnic groups within the school. Yes. Just want to compliment what I've seen in a lot of the schools. There, we've come to a point where I think this school district is one of the only ones in the province that is actually taking steps forward to reconciliation in a humane, kind, compassionate way. That's all I want to say. And next time you come, don't be so nervous. It's good.
Wow. I've always loved going to Copenhagen. I can't wait to go home with your gardens and the changes that have been made since I know vacation time. But the land acknowledgement piece, that touches me, and I think about what we do as a board. We have, something standard, and maybe that's something that we need to reflect on as well as to what we want to say, really. And honestly, as a board, maybe that's a conversation we need to have. So thank you for bringing us that to our attention, that your kiddos can see that maybe it's time we do too. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. Croft?
Just wanted to say thank you for noting your newcomer kids and actually including those folks in your data and your understanding of diversity. I work at the Cowichan Cultural Society, and we know that our newcomers are really hungry for information and to participate in reconciliation. So I'd just like to be grateful for the opportunity you're extending to those families.
And I have a comment. Nothing but great things. Well, that's a tribute to all for you and your staff and just your bad things. That's a tribute to all of you. Thank you, and if you can send me a new land acknowledgement at the beginning of January. I think that's a good idea. We welcome Mr. Hoff from Cowichan Secondary School.
A bronze team that's going to come up with Okay, so we're all here for a Cowichan Secondary Framework for Enhancing Student Learning. I'll start with saying Ike Squile, Sam Nasiaya, and Darth He's not Cowichan Secondary. I want to see Lamal Kanaqueo. Hello, respected friends. It's good to see you all today. My name is Darth Hoff, principal of Cowichan Secondary, and I'm here with friends.
And for Jenny Hittinger. And for Rona Caesaron.
And for So Cowichan Secondary is situated on the unceded lands of the Wet'suwet'en people, and our students are fortunate to gather there each day to learn, play, and be a part of the community. Our framework for enhancing student learning was designed, co-created. We included students, staff, parents through the pack, and we did large group sessions, we did small group sessions, went to classes, and then we also did street data, one-on-one conversations with kids.
And when we think of our school and college and secondary and the demographics, we have just to relook at this again today because it's like changed a lot since September even, but 916 students. 219 of our students Indigenous history, that's 24%. 113 of our students are from the international program. 148 students are with designation, and 104 French immersion students. We could break down every one of those bullets into more detail. But if we think of Cowichan secondaries, where all of our elementary schools into, and just think of the diversity we have in the central, so quite diverse, which adds to the rich.
Our story, it seems to be bred in this valley for years, I would say. Cowichan Secondary School has a proud history of its accomplishments in areas of academics, athletics, fine arts, trades, and applied skills. And having all of our grade 10 to 12 students that are on the grad plan with us, there is such a vast array of electives that we offer in our school, from technology to trades pieces to sewing, fine arts, law, such a wealth of variety, which gives many of our students opportunities to find areas to connect with their future endeavors.
And so it's really kind of interesting to see, this is just a really quick snapshot of some of the things that our students and our teachers are leading that are outside of the timetable. So these are things that are happening at lunchtime, before school, after school. You can tell there's something for everybody out there. So it doesn't matter whether you're athletic or you're into a particular club. We've got wonderful teacher sponsors that are always looking to encourage students to create their own club. There's a Dungeons and Dragons club this year that started up, and it was a student initiative. Sponsor teacher. So there's all kinds of really great things outside that timetable that are available for our students.
For our school goals, we did at our staff meeting, we had all of our staff come together and we looked at what our goals were the year before and what our goals were going to be this year. And then we took that information and we had an idea of what we're going to work on. And then we went, following that, we talked with PAC and then students. And we'll get to it in a coming up slide, but the students, it's interesting their perspective and what sometimes the adult thinks as our student goals should be. But our three goals that we're looking at this year primarily are Indigenous, or around Indigenous education, literacy, and mental health.
So when we look at our Indigenous education, we're looking to improve our Indigenous education. So we kind of have two places that we're looking at that. So one of which is our Indigenous education program and the consultants and the different people that work within that team, supporting all of our students. So they work with, our consultants work with the grade specific. So we'll have a grade 10 consultant, a grade 11 and a grade 12, and they'll travel through the grades with those students. So they get to know that cohort really well and are able to provide supports to them, social, emotional, and all of those pieces. But they also do things for all of our students. So right now, Homework Club is just wrapping up. After school, it's open to everyone. Same with our girls group that's happening in the after school hours as well. And again, not just open to Indigenous students, but all students within the school. But we're also looking at increasing our Indigenous education course options. So we've got a few new courses that are happening this year. Our First People's English is new to the school this year. But we have a whole variety of other courses as well. And one of the things we're working on with all of our teachers is making sure that they're learning with our community members to increase the Indigenous content in their classrooms. And so there's this year, with COVID restrictions coming down, lots of community members that are coming in and being part of all of the courses, no matter where you are.
And then we'll move on to our other goal, which is literacy. meeting this morning about our district's literacy plan, and so I'm thankful for some of the data that we're looking at and drilling down deeper into, because that has really informed some of the work that I think in the past we need to do, but now we're getting more specific with being intentional about our files. So last year, we had been looking at more data using assessment of the maze, and we did that with all of our grade 10s, and then we went to the grade 9s at Thomaton to try to compare for this whole year. So we knew the students that were coming in their needs. And so when we looked at that data, we found that 23% of our students entering in grade 10 this year were at about a grade 5 level or below. And that's just a quick snapshot, but that allowed us to look at those students and then do further testing to see, okay, what exactly do they need? And sharing that data with our teachers has also allowed us to start creating, well, I think it has started, but to go further with that culture of literacy, and that it's all of our work in the school. And so that work is happening now, and we also have literacy interventions. We have a teacher that specifically is working with the students that need more time and more often. So at a high school level, at first, like, oh, this is going to be tricky. I don't know if they'll want to come. We have something at Cal High called Thrive Time, so it's embedded throughout the week, a time where students can do some other learning. So they're not necessarily coming out of this practice, but it is student choice to do this work. And wow, our experience last year, when I walk by the room and see the teacher working with these students, and they come out with smiles on their faces. The street data, one snapshot of a comment that I'll take is a student in grade 11 who said, I feel more confident now because I can read. And so I think the importance of this work is clear, and it also aligns with our strategic plan. And yeah, it's really making a difference. They're like chats, I think, in what they want to do after school. Very much.
Our third goal was related to mental health. And as you know, most of the schools last year with teams worked on plans and did surveys and are continuing to do that work in their schools. And for us, our kids came up with some things that stood out predominantly for us. And that was that they wanted to know more about mental health literacy. We were surprised how many kids could advocate and explain that in their survey, even in their personal comments within the survey that was sent out to our students. They wanted us to find them and connect and find them more supports with their outside agencies. They also expressed the need for expansion of spaces to take breaks or have mental health breaks. Just, quieter spaces, be able to take 5 minutes, which is kind of hard in our current building, but with the new building, I'm sure we're going to find lots of and more feeling of belonging and connection. So we actually had a really huge team from Cal High. We had SSWs, EAs, Stoutons, teachers, counselors, myself, and some of the other men team here. And we comprised like a group of 11 or 12 of us on that team. And we were surprised at how much data we actually got. We actually had 68% of our school population answer the survey for us. So we got a wealth of data, and from that data and looking at that previous slide around what our students were looking for or wanted or had a need for, we knew we needed to work with our teachers and give them some more supports in the classrooms and I'm not sure if you're all aware, but in the PHE program, health education is part of that piece. And many of our teachers didn't feel that they had enough skills or resources to work with their students. So we took some of the money that was allocated and we had all our PHE teachers last year have a half day together and train in that program so they could come up with methods and sources and lesson plans together that would work for them in their classes. We also noticed that our grade 10s were that group that was really hit hard by COVID. They never really got to spend time at Quamachin, and then all of a sudden they're in a grade 10 to 12 building. And what do we do and what does high school look like? So we also trained all our grade 10 teachers in the EASE program, which was really beneficial for them, and many of them used that in their classroom settings. And that other piece that those kids were talking about to us about outside agency, there's a few things that we have going on right now. There's some stuff happening that Rhonda talked earlier, where kids can come and talk about some of these things that are on that last slide here, right side here of the slide. And these are some of the topics that the kids are interested in, and the team at the school have been bringing in some outside agencies for them to connect with. The other graphic is a lot of our kids were constantly looking for emergency contact numbers related to mental health. So as a team, we said we needed to create something that kids could have easy access. Sometimes we see these sheets with a million numbers, they don't work, they don't know who they connect with. So we concised it down to a few set of numbers for our kiddos, and we would put these in the washrooms. And then we found that a lot of teachers were getting kids asking questions. So now even our teachers have asked for these to be in their classroom. That's what piece on mental health.
So the next piece is our stories beyond education. And from the phone calls that we get to our office and the emails, it's really clear that there's a real need, and that a lot of the community feels we're raising their children. And so that's where some of this Our Story is Beyond comes from. Focus on mental health and compassion weeks, connecting students to the land through different ways, different activities, different opportunities. Cultural connections, we have a group there from Lyon, France, where we had 20 students. We have 20 of our students that went there. Our SOGI students, they are looking for support and a place where they feel safe. And our Rainbow Club is expanding, and it is great. Also, the number of students we're feeding daily through Nurse Passion, through our through all of these different supports, it really does go beyond just classroom learning. And two of the stories we have to share here. One is our environmental stewardship program. There was a land-based program at Cal High maybe 5-6 years ago, and it fell off. And then so we're looking at bringing it back because there's a need for that type of program. And so we had a couple of our staff members work with Paul Kalesa, Albie Charlie, and he came and he really helped ground us in what a program could be and should look like. And now we have about 40 students a year, about half are Indigenous, half non-Indigenous, students that need a lot of adaptations to learning, right up to our Governor General's Award winner was out of that program last year. It's connected to the environment. It's about the environment, but it's connected to the land, that the speakers that come in that really ground the learning in First Peoples principles. It really is something that I wish every student had the opportunity to take. And it is a real special program. Some of the photos here that the students, they've adopted the stream, and they go down, they take samples, they monitor the stream, they care for the stream, they get rid of invasive species. And all along they're getting their English, human geography, environmental science, outdoor ed, all of these, and their careers credits, all in a half-day program that really connects them and creates a little sense of community there. And then the last story I'll tell here is this was, we were fortunate to receive a grant from the district a couple of years ago, Indigenous Inquiry. grant. And so we did street day that went around, talked to kids, and they thought the thing that we needed, what we ended up with a loom project. So we had Ken Wilson design a loom for us, and then we had Calvin Weaver, Cheryl Joe come in, and Cheryl Joe worked with classrooms, and the goal was to get all the grade 12s through, and then all the grade 11s, all the grade 10s. So the goal is to do this every year, and so she works with students on building a pocket pouch to learn weaving in a traditional way. And then the students, once they're done that, they came and we had them adding to the blanket here. They'd add a string to the blanket. So in the end, of having all students and staff members come together and weave this blanket together as there's a metaphor there, and all of that learning that goes into it. And some students would come and they just weave because it just helps you regulate, just that hands-on, just that doing and that patterning. And it was really cool. We, as is tradition in Cowichan peoples, is the first of something you make, you give it away. And so our first blanket last year, we had at our grad ceremony, a couple of our graduates, gift the blanket to some Cowichan students. And so that blanket now lives at Cowichan. And our goal is to make a new blanket every year. And hopefully the goal is to see our sister school, yes. And so the future to have this loom sit in our grand entrance at the new school and have kids just weaving and doing and producing a blanket every year would be a vision. And then lastly, Hisaka, thank you to all. We from our event team, we are loving working here. So it's a lot of fun. Yeah, we do. We have a lot of fun. It is a great place, and I always say, like, I'm spending 10 hours a day there, and I see my family for 3. So this becomes my family. So, and it's a great place, and you should all come and see it sometime. Thank you. It's a great.
Any questions, comments?
A couple of things I picked up as you went through the presentation. It was good, thank you. One, we need to get our support workers in all schools to promote in the Indigenous community the importance of the FAS, because otherwise you're never going to get, you might be able to change that 23%. It's one of the things that people don't understand is what the value is with it. And secondly, in your Indigenous portion, we talked about your sports and all of this. One thing was missing that you might want to think about: dancing. If they're not going to be in sports in the classroom, there's more than a single. We have a variety, and it doesn't just have to be Indigenous. It could be Mexican. There's a lot of good things that I heard, and I've always been a strong promoter for independent programs. My son was one of those kids that were working in up the highway with old trees, and not one child in that duration, not one child missed a day. That's something that stayed in my mind, that they didn't want to stay away from that program. Doing hollies and doing old oak trees, all this other stuff they're saving, told me that it's time that, much like what you're saying, and I'd like you to copy that mental health survey the kids did, because we need to understand we're at the door where we have to say our students have to start telling us what they want to learn rather than us telling them what they gotta learn. Times are changing, and this isn't the 60s anymore. Yeah, and your knitting portion, let them know that the board could use new.
Thank you. It's hard to fit everything in a presentation. On Mondays and Thursdays, we got Calvin from the Friendship Center come into our building and support our students with drumming and dancing. It would be, and hopefully get to a point where it happens every day and not just on the days that Calvin shows up.
And we've done some activities with Staminas where our kids have done a physical activity and then afterwards they share in dancing and drumming and the unique differences.
And this Qualetza.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for touching base on the mental health piece. It's something that we as board members have, there's been some very strong, loud voices talking to us regarding kids and mental health and stuff and mental health and hearing what you're saying is encouraging to me anyway. I won't speak for everybody else, but it's great to hear that you heard the kids, how you're implementing what they're asking for, because it is very clear to all of us as we were honored to be given these seats. And mental health needs to be a priority on board. So thank you very much for at least, giving us a little update on what you guys are working with for our kiddos to make sure that they're mentally well.
Trustee Croft?
Thank you. Yeah, it looks awesome. I have a question also regarding mental health. And so it looks like you've taken some initiatives over last year in this. I was wondering, are you planning or have you tracked any of the impacts of those initiatives? Or planning to track any, or is that even important?
Well, it is important, but a lot of kids are expressing that we're starting to help support them in ways. And I think the classroom teachers can probably have a better say on that because they're making that connection. And then our counseling team and a lot with the Tuesday Thrives, I think a lot of kids are choosing to come. And so it allows them again to not miss out of class time and have the ability to come and hear about things or find places to go where other supports. And sometimes it's better to be done in a stigma-free sort of a way and not calculate. I think a lot of kids find that's easier.
That's actually going to be my follow-up. Is there just a general sense in the school that many of these students are having positive impacts?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think
The students are asking for these things, and you're right. Dylan, whenever we implement something, we need to take that time to look at how it's going. And so implementing some of these things in September, like we're seeing that in the new year, having those conversations with students. But I find many of our students are sharing more with the adults in the building. There's a in the office, whether that's with teachers or supporters. They're dealing with a lot. And they know that this is a place where they can get help and support. So
Yeah, I think, one of the important parts is connecting students to an adult for the year. So our Humanities 10 students, they have a teacher for the year. The environmental stewardship program or rugby program, the reason those are successful, or one of the reasons, is because they're half-day programs all year with a group of kids and a teacher. Also, our drama, theater, / English, we put those together and made a theater / English. So that teacher leading those students throughout the year. And I think that's even having 7 teachers throughout a year isn't great. So try to build programs where students have interest and choice, they choose it, and they connect to.
that comes to that same piece, and that's great. Belonging and connectivity. They go through so fast that they don't. And it's a 3-year span. In grade 10, they come. They need to find an adult or somebody to connect with. So we're hoping to make more of those opportunities.
Sorry, one last one. Do you think, well, I don't know. I mean, they're coming up against a big deadline, right? Which is graduation. I'm not sure, when we're younger in elementary or even in grade 8, if we really think about it. But I suspect once you hit college and secondary, that's on your mind. Do you find that affects how people digest stress and move forward?
For some kids, the changeover from K to 9, then all of a sudden you're at the grad plan, it can be, or what do I do next? What am I going to do? So that's important. We have a great careers team and great counseling team. And the kids connect with us as well around those plans, so we ensure that they have the right comparisons and the informed process.
Trustee Leaser?
Love it. I was a graduate from Cal High, and it's very different now that I'm old from what it was before. But one of the things that I actually worked with the district on a vaping initiative a few years ago. We knew that our vaping rates were increasing, and the pandemic actually helped subside that a little bit until now. Maybe their habits might have changed, but the challenges around partner violence and sexual activity and substance use and all that is directly linked to your mental health. And so kids who are really struggling and confidence. So I'm really hoping that some of our most fragile students within themselves find that as a safe place to not only be talking about other topics, but that actually is their mental health. And I really love how you're connecting to the broader community, because out on the streets, we're working with kids who aren't even in your schools anymore. And they've fallen into a place in their lives where the substances are leading. And if they had that mental health support when they were needing it when they were younger, maybe they needed that same thing. So that relationship between school and community and family and community, see that happening.
Just so you know, last year we did have a class, for PD health. I got hooked up with the Dutch program around the thinking and talking about those kinds of things. They had to do an initiative within the school, so they did work on something like that as well.
It was wonderful to see them now take that knowledge and even go or even into the older elementary school, because listening to us is out of but boy, that person who came from the high school is so cool. And so
Better than that.
Yeah.
Principal tonight.
During some more events and we know that our community has so many resources and our district community as well. So the more that we can solidify those lines back and forth, I think the kids are.
I'm just curious on that literacy point, the grade 9 where you assess to go into grade 10. Is that done for the French immersion as well?
Yeah.
So you're testing to make sure on the French side the kids are.
Oh, in French?
Yeah, because you're bringing your French immersion students over, correct? Yeah.
So the literacy assessments were only done in English.
Okay.
Although the French immersion teachers do their own assessments.
They do it.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that environmental program sounded amazing. You said it's a half-day program. Is that all it is? Or is there like a number of half days?
No, it's half day all year long,
Okay.
and then the other half a day they're getting their other
Oh,
electives.
okay.
I guess that's where they get their math and
Okay.
choice courses.
That's awesome. Like I find this area, I've lived all over Canada and internationally, and this area is so important from an eco and watershed perspective, and the salmon and global warming and on and on and on. And I think it's critical that the schools kind of, I think even younger than at the high school, have a lot of programming in that regard. And we're fortunate on the First Nation side or Indigenous side, pardon me, to have such great stewards. But it's really about, to me, teaching that next generation and embedding it in the school like that, I think is fantastic. So I commend you for that. And we had a presentation on the new school, and it's one of the pieces I walked away thinking about is you almost need a plan, like a strategic plan of how your school is going to move into that school and the impacts, because it's such a unique building and the rooms are not sort of the rooms like you're working in right now. And what's the impact it's going to have on your teaching and on your staff and on operations. And anyways, I just kind of thought of that when I was driving home from our session on the weekend. I'm sure you're excited, but I think there's going to be a lot of work too for all of you. So
One of our PLC groups specifically is working on pedagogy in the new building, because the new building provides certain structures and systems that, and so let's not get there and then change what we're doing. How are we? So they're working on how they can be hitting the ground running with all of those tools.
There's one thing that I want to let you know, and some of the other schools that might be sitting in this room. Kwame Lalo has a new program they've got that's just totally rocket. And it's one of your guys' grads from last year. I don't know if you remember Trinae. Well, he's now a youth support worker for Kwame Lalo, dealing with kids in care that are in schools that are borderline. I can't help them, I don't know what to do, let's just send them home. He's the new guy that's basically saying, don't give up on us, because I won't. They're having a great success rate, and as long as the principal and teachers are fine with it, you can actually have a youth support worker that's young and knows is on the same level in some ways with this, with these, just food for thought.
I know you probably have. And just one last thing, because I work on some regional strategies around airshed quality and water quality and through our county communities health network. And it would be fabulous to have youth who are engaged in that environmental learning to even come and sit with representatives from all of our communities who are trying to solve some really complex challenges around our environment. So I'd love to in contact.
Yeah.
I graduated from Cowichan Secondary last year. Thank you very much. Graduate, now founding the University of Calgary, where 3, the starters for the University of Calgary field hockey team for Cowichan girls, 4 UBC, and 3 or 4 out of UVic. So has a strong contingent in Western Canada playing field hockey, and a few in Eastern Canada. So thank you very much. We do. We'll graduating next year. So thank you for your staff. That's great. Moving on, business and operations. Sandwest.
I am going to share the screen. That's sort of why I ran up to my laptop. There it is. Sorry.
We are too. Come on.
There are 2 budgets a year that the board adopts, and the first one happens in the spring for the next school year. So it gives the board the authority, the standing authority to begin to operate on July the 1st. But we know in the spring what actually happens around student enrollment isn't always exactly the same as what we projected. So what I'm showing you here is how the enrollments change. Well, that's going to affect the funding that's going to come into the immediate budget. That'll come back to this committee in January for recommendation to the board in February. The bulk of the budget direction is set in the spring budget cycle. Really what happens is enrollment changes and we put in additional teachers, and we put in additional staff, and we put in additional supplies that are really on a formula basis for or contractually related to that enrollment increase. So in March, this is what the grant looked like. And I'm just kind of showing that September to September because I've got no changes on the rest of it. But we had projected the grant to be at about 87.6 million. That was based on the students as they count here. And there's different levels of funding. So we get funding based on student enrollment, and that's separate. And we get funding based on unique student needs. So depending on the types of designations, we have 8 level 1 and projected 454 level 2, et cetera, and then we've got religious learners. And that all translates into this formula. So what happened is we grew by 55 students between our projection in the spring and where we're at today. But you can see that there's a bit of a shift in where those students actually are. So this net total is 55, but distributed learning went down by 76. So way more students left distributed learning and went back to regular classrooms. They're funded at a greater rate in regular classrooms than they are in distributed learning. So the funding actually goes up even more than we would project based on 55 students.
Now distributed learning really took off during the pandemic. So what we're probably seeing is a result of those students now transitioning back into school programs that they were in previously. So that revenue expectation is about $547,000 increase. But we know we have teachers that we put in as well. So when we bring you a reconciliation of the entire budget, you're going to see the staffing levels that have changed. More significantly, we're seeing some bigger increases in our special needs. So nothing in level 1, but level 2 going up from 454 to 502. And that's generating over $1 million. Not so significant in level 3, up by 6 students. English language learners up by 32. We've already made staffing adjustments in both areas. We have additional education assistants that have been had to be put in, because 48 learners is a significant number that needed support. And we have additional ELL language teachers that have had to go in, and that's because we have contractual languages in the teachers' collective agreement as to how many we have to have based on student numbers. And then we'll also have an increase in our targets. So the Indigenous education dollars are the only dollars that are targeted. So of all of this budget, the only amount that the board doesn't have the ability to underspend or spend differently on, you can always overspend, is the Indigenous education target. So it's been up by $103,000. So there's more money in that particular area. So net results out of September enrollment is we expect our grants to go up by just under 1.8 million. Very significant. What we don't see in here at all is whether or not how the funding is going to come into the formula for the wage increases. That's not factored in. That's all outside. I'm just comparing the same grant formula we had in the spring with the enrollment that we have today. So we wanted to make you aware that that's a positive direction for funding, and that the amended budget will start to come your way as we begin to roll out those reconciliations to bring to you. And that's all I wanted to show you tonight, as I think this is, for some trustees, their first introduction to our funding formula. And it doesn't look exactly like this. This is just a spreadsheet version, simple way to look at it. I can also show you that there's a salary differential line, and that's there to ensure that there's no disincentive to hire a teacher at a higher salary than one at a lower salary. So we get funding for our average teacher salary, how much it is above the lowest in the province. So everybody is on equal footing, regardless of whether you have new teachers or senior teachers. Unique geographic factors, that will likely change somewhat by the time this comes back. That's how cold is it working in. We don't get a lot there for our temperature because we have more than it is in the north. The transporting goods, how far schools are away from each other. And then we have the education plan. We have 2 other counts, one in February and one in May, and you can see they're significantly smaller. There.
Questions?
Probably obvious to everybody else, but not to me. So level 1, level 2, level 3 special needs. As you get higher in those numbers, do the needs of the independent state learners get greater? Is that what that is?
Level 1 are the most significant needs. Okay. And that's why there's a really small number of level 1 students. Those would you likely need those students that can do one-on-one support all the time. Maybe life issues.
Those FTEs on the right there, 48, 6, and
Those are changes.
that's about 48 more learners in level 2.
In that
have come in.
category. That's a pretty significant change.
That is, and then I guess my question to that was then, do you adjust in relation to folks that can work with those kids so that their learning is effective and positive and
Yeah, we have to hire more staff, and so that's staff has been giving to inclusive education already because it's driven by the enrollment numbers. And those records, we'll show you what that looks like when it comes back.
Questions? Okay, thank you very much.
was really good.
Policy. We're gonna hit on policy. Okay, committees, the advisory committee meeting, that's this stuff.
So we met for the very first time. Years in person. It's been 2 years, I think. Yeah, so that was kind of fun. So we're pretty excited to meet together. Although I have to admit, I did kind of miss the photo bombs by the various cats, birds, dogs, and children. And also welcome to the Zoom meeting, especially. It's awesome to see people face to face. A whole different kind of communication.
So after having survived school startup with a school population that was with more bottoms and seats than we had expected, everyone has, I would say, generally settled into the school year, and that's what our advisory committee members are telling us. There is a lot of happiness about being around together, about offering all of the activities in person, and point to both of our presentations today that gave us some insight into all the activities sort of beyond education that people are engaged in. And it's just nice to be operating without all those COVID constraints. Reconciliation is a standing item, and there's lots of interesting things happening around that. Our school communities are very ambitious regarding reconciliation, and they are continually asking, pushing, encouraging for new resources and new learning that they can share with their communities and with their students. So those are the highlights.
Do you get a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Trustee Thorne,
Can I say something?
comments?
I want to say that that was a really great advisory meeting. There was some really good questions asked by trustees. It created some really great conversation. That it's been a long time since I've heard such fulsome, great conversation. So I was really glad that challenges were made because out of it came what I thought was some really positive stuff that the partners were talking about. And then the conversation just continued. And it was really nice to hear that happening. And I really hope that it continues, that partners can continue to come forward and free flow really positive feedback within those meetings. It was a good meeting.
Well, they're all like that.
And we strive for them to all be like that and remain close to our advisory groups.
Appreciate your partners for bringing up a lot of topics that we need to talk about. That I do hope that continues in the future. So thank you. Okay, all in favor? Unanimously. Okay, motion for adjournment. Oh, sorry. Oh, motion for adjournment? Keith Schmidt. Here. Okay, seconder, trustee Crott, all in favor? Thank you very much.